My name's Jack Murphy. I'm 61, a widower living in a quiet suburb outside Bend, Oregon. I've spent the last 20 years working as an office manager at a mid-sized law firm, and I raised two kids on my own, Ryan, who's now 34, and Sarah, who just turned 30. I poured most of my adult life into making sure they had what they needed and didn't have to struggle the way I did. Then, last Tuesday, I got an email from Sarah that changed everything. No subject, just her name sitting there in my inbox. I smiled, thinking it was a quick note or something sweet about her upcoming wedding. We'd talked about the details just weeks ago, and I'd already put in $25,000 to help cover the venue, photographer, and the florist she had her heart set on since college. But the second I opened it, the smile faded. It started with Dad. No warmth, just that one cold word. She told me that she and her fiancé, Mark, along with his family, had finalized the guest list for their Napa wedding, and they decided it would be best if I attended virtually, via livestream. Apparently, Mark's mother wanted to keep it intimate. The final line hit me like a slap. If you still want to be part of it, here's the Google Meet link. Should feel just like being there, LOL. That LOL stuck in my head like a bad echo. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I just stared at the screen while my coffee went cold. Something in me cracked, but I was still standing. I replied with 4 words, sure. Enjoy your day. No drama, no debate, just a quiet retreat. I knew those words would cut deeper than any argument ever could. I didn't want to fight or pity. I wanted clarity. I closed my laptop, finished the cold coffee, and got ready for work like it was any other Tuesday, but it wasn't. That was the day I stopped pretending my sacrifices ever meant anything to her. The drive to the office was silent, and though spring in Oregon still carried a chill, I barely noticed. My mind just kept circling the same thought. How did we end up here? I've worked at Peterson and Harris for 18 years. Not a flashy place, but it gave me the stability I desperately needed after losing my wife, a sudden heart attack, when the kids were still teens. I remember standing in the laundry room, bills spread out across the counter, trying to figure out how to pay for groceries and Ryan's tuition at the same time. I gave up weekends, skipped birthdays, said no to vacations. Told myself there'd be time for me later. That time never came. Every extra dime I saved went to them. When Sarah changed majors twice, I paid for the extra credits. When she moved across the country for a job that barely lasted, I paid for her apartment and her flight. When she cried her way through a breakup at 27, I flew to her place, made her soup, and listened. When Ryan wanted to buy a home with his girlfriend, I co-signed the mortgage and handed over $9,000 without blinking. I never kept score. That's just what dads do, right? But that email made me feel like I had an expiration date. Like I'd been useful, until I wasn't. Back at the office, my boss Tom came by. The kind of guy who remembers your birthday and how you take your coffee. He dropped a fresh one on my desk and said, "You look like you've seen a ghost." I wanted to tell him the truth, that my daughter had just disinvited me from her wedding, but all I said was I hadn't slept great. He didn't push, and that small kindness nearly knocked the wind out of me. After the noise in my head that morning, the quiet moment reminded me that I still mattered. Around lunch, my phone buzzed. Sarah again. Her name lit up the screen like a flashlight I wanted to turn off. Voicemails, texts. "Dad, please answer. We need to talk. This isn't funny." I didn't listen. Not yet. I just sat there, sipping my latte, thinking maybe it was time I stopped being the one who always answered. Maybe it was time I stepped out of a story that didn't even have room for me. And that afternoon, I made a choice. Calm, steady, final. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to beg. I was done pretending. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to do something much stronger. I was going to act. After work, instead of heading straight home, I drove over to First Federal Bank just a few blocks from the office. Carlos, the branch manager, had been helping me for years, setting up the kids' college accounts, walking me through retirement plans. Always greeted me with a firm handshake and a friendly "Mr. Murphy, good to see you." I sat down across from him, placed my keys on the desk, and spoke in a voice that was a little too steady. "I need to cancel a wire transfer," I told him. He blinked, then asked, "The one for the Napa venue?" "Yeah, that's the one." He paused. "There may be a cancellation fee, depending on when it hits. May I ask why?" "Plans changed," I said simply. He tapped on his keyboard, then looked up. "You're in luck. It hasn't gone through yet. Just in time." He hesitated, his eyes locking with mine. Are you sure, Mr. Murphy? That was for $50,000. I nodded once. I'm sure. That 50 grand was supposed to be the next installment, on top of the $30,000 I'd already sent. $80,000. For a wedding I wasn't even invited to attend. I signed the paperwork, thanked Carlos, and left the bank without a single doubt in my mind. By the time I got home, I had 9 missed calls from Sarah and 2 from Ryan. One voicemail from her just said, "Dad, please, don't do this." I turned off the phone. In the kitchen, I reached for a bottle of red wine I'd been saving for Thanksgiving. Never opened it. Sarah was supposed to come visit, but she backed out last minute. Work, she had said. I poured a glass, stepped out onto the porch, and sat in the quiet evening. Birds were chirping in the trees, a neighbor's dog barked in the distance, and everything around me felt still. Then the memories started pouring in. Birthdays I threw together on my own, holidays where I sat at the table pretending I wasn't hoping for a call that never came. All the little things I gave up that no one ever saw. The new boots I passed on. The same old pickup truck I drove for over a decade. The vacations I kept putting off. And then I thought about Mark's mother, a woman who barely knew Sarah, but somehow her preferences mattered more than mine. Her idea of family meant leaving out the one person who had carried Sarah through every storm. And that damn LOL at the end of Sarah's email, as if watching my only daughter's wedding through a screen was something to laugh about. Finally, I stopped thinking like a father, like a widower, and just let myself be a man. What did I want? Peace, self-respect, a life that didn't revolve around being useful to people who only remembered me when they needed something. Around 9 that night, the doorbell rang. I thought about ignoring it, but my curiosity got the best of me. It was Ryan, still in his dress shirt and slacks, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, looking uneasy, holding his phone like a prop. "Dad," he said, stepping inside before I even said hello. "Why aren't you answering your phone? Sarah's losing it." I shut the door behind him. "Nice to see you too." He sighed, already pacing. "She says you're refusing to go to the wedding now. That you're being difficult." I laughed. Difficult? For not showing up to a wedding I was uninvited from? He shifted, clearly uncomfortable. "Mark's parents are covering most of the costs, Dad. You know how old school they are." I raised an eyebrow. Old school? I already gave 30 grand. I was about to send another 50. That's not old school. That's a damn payoff. He froze mid-step. "Wait, you were going to send another $50,000. I said, sipping my wine. "Not anymore." Ryan's face went pale. "Dad, they're counting on that. The venue, the food, not my problem," I said flatly. His voice rose. "How is it not your problem? She's your daughter." "And I'm her father," I said, quietly but firm. A father who was told to stay home and watch from a screen. He dragged a hand through his hair, clearly flustered. "You always make everything about yourself." And that was it. That was the moment something deep inside me cracked for good. "Get out of my house." "What?" "You heard me, Ryan. Get out." "Dad." "No," I said again calmly. "I've given everything I had. I'm done being the bad guy in a story I wrote with love." Ryan stood there for a beat longer, then turned and walked out. The door didn't slam, but the quiet click felt louder than thunder. I stood there, alone in the living room, heart pounding, and realized something that hit me harder than anything else that day. I didn't feel an ounce of guilt. If anything, I felt like I could finally breathe again. That morning, I rolled over to see 43 missed calls and a flood of panicked messages from my daughter, Haley. The first few were laced with guilt tripping and drama. "Dad, we need to talk. Why are you doing this? You're being immature." Then the tone shifted fast. "The venue just called. The payment bounced. If we don't cover it by tomorrow, we lose everything." Mason's parents are livid. "They said this just confirms what they've always thought about you." At 2:34 a.m., another one came in. "I don't get why you're doing this to me." I took a slow sip of my coffee and just smiled. Of course she didn't get it. Haley had spent her whole life cocooned in the comfort I built for her. The safety, the steadiness, like it was air, like it just existed. She never stopped to think about who made that possible. She assumed I'd always show up, that I'd always pay. But not this time. A little later, while I was combing through vendor contracts at the office, an email popped up on my personal account. Subject line, "Please don't ruin my wedding." I opened it, not expecting much. "Dad," she wrote, "I know you're mad about the livestream thing, but this is over the top. We already lost the deposit, and if the balance isn't paid by end-of-day Paris time, the caterer walks. Mason's parents are beyond frustrated. They say you're being unreasonable. Please don't do this. We can talk about you attending the ceremony, but we need the money first. There it was. Now that the cash had disappeared, suddenly they were open to discussing me being allowed to show up. No ownership, no regret, just leverage. As if me watching my own daughter get married could be put up for negotiation depending on how deep my wallet went. I didn't answer. I closed the tab and went back to work. Around lunchtime, my buddy Carl wandered over to my desk. "Grab a bite," he asked. That new Italian place opened down the street. Normally I'd pass, but something in me shifted. Maybe it was the weight that had finally rolled off my shoulders in the past day, or maybe I just needed a space where nobody needed anything from me. I nodded. "Sure, let's go." Over plates of pasta, he told me about his grandkids and how wild but beautiful it was chasing them around. His eyes were soft, grounded. Then, mid-story, he paused and said gently, "Hope you don't mind me saying this, Mark, but you look lighter today." I surprised myself by telling him everything. About Haley, the emails, the wedding, the money, and what I did. When I finished, he didn't judge or offer a fix. He just nodded and said, "Sometimes real love means putting up boundaries, especially with the ones you've given everything to." Then he reached over and gave my hand a quick squeeze. "You did the right thing." And for the first time in years, I actually believed it. When I got back to my desk, more calls, more messages had come in, but I let them ring out. I didn't feel the need to explain anymore. My silence was finally saying everything that needed to be said. That evening, as the sun was setting and the porch light flicked on by itself, I pulled into the driveway. The yard looked peaceful, too peaceful, but there was someone sitting on my front steps. As I got closer, I saw it was Jenna. She stood up fast, brushing her coat nervously. Jenna had been Haley's best friend since they were 10. She practically grew up in my house, baking cookies in the kitchen, watching Disney movies, crashing on the couch during sleepovers. I hadn't seen her in ages. "Mr. Turner," she said softly, "I'm sorry to just show up." "It's okay," I said as I unlocked the front door. "You want some tea?" She followed me into the kitchen, eyes wandering around like she was chasing old memories through the walls. I put the kettle on and waited. "Haley send you?" I asked eventually. She hesitated. Then, "She's falling apart. The venue's gone. The florist bailed. Mason's parents are threatening to pull the plug. She's panicking. She knows she messed up, but she doesn't know how to fix it." I didn't say a word, just set 2 mugs on the counter. "So is that why you're here?" I asked. "To fix it?" She shook her head. "No. I'm here to ask if there's anything she can say, anything at all, that might change your mind." I paused, really thought about it. Was there? Would a last-minute apology really undo what it felt like to be treated like an ATM, to be told you weren't invited unless you were paying? I looked at Jenna, still young, still believing people could mean their words. "No," I said quietly. "There's not." Her shoulders dropped. "Not even if she says she's sorry?" I handed her the mug. "Words come easy when someone's desperate," I told her. "The people who really love you, they don't wait until you cut them off to finally see you." She stared down into her tea, nodded slowly. "I understand," she said. "Even if she doesn't. I'm sorry, Mr. Turner." "You don't need to be," I replied. We stood there for a bit, quiet, 2 people from very different worlds, but bound by the same hard truth. Sometimes love has limits. And sometimes the only way to be seen is to walk away. Jenna didn't stay long. She didn't try to argue. She didn't have to. She didn't argue, didn't plead. Just thanked me softly, gave me a gentle hug, and disappeared into the night. And me? I finally shut the door, not just on her, but on a version of myself I'd been dragging around for years. One that gave too much and asked for too little. The wedding never happened the way they planned. They scrambled to find a new venue, but everything decent was either booked solid or way out of their budget without the money I had once pledged. From what my son Daniel told me, they ended up having a simple backyard ceremony a few weeks later, just a handful of family members and Mason's parents. I didn't get an invite, and honestly, for the first time, I didn't care. In the weeks after, Haley sent one last email, a long one, full of emotion. Part apology, part excuses. I read it once, then clicked archive and never opened it again. I wasn't mad anymore. I was just finished. There's a quiet kind of peace that shows up when you let go, not out of anger, but from a place of clarity. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I started waking up without that tight knot in my chest, wondering who was going to need something from me that day, or how I'd be guilt-tripped into saying yes again. I made myself a new rule. If my presence is something people feel entitled to negotiate, then my effort is up for negotiation too. These days, I go to work, I read actual books, I signed up for a pottery class just for the hell of it. I sit down for dinner with friends who know me for me, not for what I can give or pay for. And here's the truth I wish I'd figured out years ago. You don't have to set yourself on fire just to keep other people warm. If this story hits something in you, go ahead, share it. Leave a comment. Hit that like or follow button. Because sometimes the most powerful kind of love, it's the one you finally stop begging for and start giving to yourself.